Hello, hello. How's everybody doing? Welcome to my talk, which will be about tools and developing for HoloLens 2 with Unity. It's also going to be a little bit broader than that. Mixed reality is more than just the HoloLens, and a lot of these tools will get into that region as well. So my name is Nick. I come from game development. I've been working in game development for basically since I was 13. And I started doing game engines and stuff like that. And so I'm very excited about all of these tools and productivity enhancers that we're going to be talking about here. So I encountered Unity I think about 8 years ago. And this was a very exciting moment for me because I basically looked at it and said, wow, this game engine is just like mine, but if you stuck 100 people on it for a couple of years. And so that was like, wow, okay, I don't have to work on my game engine anymore. I can just switch over to this thing and use this. And I did for a very long time. So one of the early experiences that I had was on the asset store. This is actually probably my favorite part about Unity. It's the thing that I think really changed the most for me. This was the very first time where I was actually able to look at tool development as something that I could do basically as a career. Like, I didn't have to sit down and say, okay, I need to build this tool for a game, or I'm just building this tool for myself. I could sit there and say, I'm just going to build a tool because I like this idea and I want to give it to people. And so I could do that, I could publish it, I could make money off of it, I could maintain it, I could add features to it, and I didn't have to worry about anything else. And so along with this came a whole community of other people too. So the asset store didn't just allow me to do this, it allowed a whole community of people to build an ecosystem of tools. And these tools are basically revolutionary, right? Like, you can sit down and say, I'm gonna build a game overnight. Just grab this thing, grab that thing, grab the other thing. And not even just for that, like, some of these tools are incredible, like the amount of detail and work that goes into them, the polish. They allow you to build levels or create awesome art, like all of these different sorts of things. So I spent a long time doing this. It was probably a couple of years. These are just some of the things that I built. Some of them are on the asset store, some of them are personal things, some are things that I built for teams. So this is what I'm very passionate about. I love building tools, and I love the fact that we can create tools in a common environment where we can distribute them, share them, and improve on them. So not so long ago, I think about a year and a half, I joined Microsoft. It was kind of like this opportunity of a lifetime. I got this chance to work on the HoloLens 2 before anybody else. So I've been working on this device for a while now, and it's a really exciting device. Building tools for it is fantastically fun. But it's not just me building tools, it's pretty much a huge chunk of Microsoft is working on tools to make mixed reality development much easier for you guys. One of the nice things about working at Microsoft and developing tools is that you don't have to worry about things like, well, how do I monetize this? Well, Microsoft is a big proponent of open source, so the vast majority of the tools that we publish are open source. They're on Git. You can, in fact, go and make a pull request on them or file an issue, and we can all collaborate on this. So that's a really, really wonderful advantage of being a tool developer at Microsoft. But the other interesting thing, and this wasn't necessarily so clear to me early on, as a Unity developer, you're kind of outside of the normal ecosystem of development. Like, the C# until recently wasn't exactly real C#, you know? Like, you're outside of this system, like the package management and everything like that. We had the asset store, and that's kind of where we went for assets. So my introduction to Microsoft was also kind of this introduction to the open source community, and just to see all the different tools and stuff that are available on GitHub and places like that. If all you're doing is looking for tools on the asset store, broaden your horizons a little bit and check out places like GitHub, because there is some fantastic stuff out there. You can just go browse through. It's a little bit harder to discover things, but you can go out there. There's a lot of really good tools. And I think this is kind of where this sort of thing came from. This is from the 2019 3 beta. they added just a way to include packages from Git. So that's a recognition that, yeah, a lot of this development does happen in places outside of the asset store. Like sometimes the iteration there is faster, or the ability to collaborate with strangers is a little bit easier. So remember to consider Git when you're looking for tools. But the thing that we're really here to talk about today is HoloLens 2 and what that means for development. So this device is one of the pinnacles of technology right now. This thing does so much in such a compact package. If you haven't heard of it much before, we'll go over some basics here. This thing does eye tracking. Like, it'll track your eyes to an accuracy of your thumb at arm's length. It'll do, it has the most recent Kinect sensor embedded in this device, so it's constantly scanning the room, recreating a representation of that in memory, so that you can then interact with that room. It has some of the finest hand tracking I have ever seen. It is hands down the best hand tracking you'll encounter, and it's only improving. Like, I've only seen the pre-release versions of this stuff, and it just keeps getting better every single month. It's incredible. This also has stereoscopic displays for displaying holograms, does it at 60 hertz and at a resolution where you can still read text crisply. Like, you can look at this, you can read it, it's very comfortable to do, and it's got a pretty big field of view too. So this is no small feat of engineering, all in the most comfortable package that I've encountered yet. This is absolutely the most comfortable headset that I've worn. It lasts for about 3 hours on a single battery charge. That's incredible. All of those things and more, like, how do you stick all that into one thing and then develop code for it? Like, just think about all those features and then wonder, wait a minute, how do I implement features for that? I don't even know how that works, right? Fortunately, we've got a whole set of stuff that does that for you. We've got some of the smartest people trying to figure out how to take these really complicated sensors and distill them into interesting information that you can then use to interpret your users' activities. So the very first tool that I want to talk about, and this is kind of our flagship tool, it's the Mixed Reality Toolkit. This is a Unity extension that basically includes all of the interaction paradigms that you could really want. So this is actually a little video. So it distills a lot of information that we've done over the years. Like, we've had a lot of researchers trying to figure out, like, what's the best way to interact with something? How do we do this in a way where it bypasses the limitations of hardware? For example, like, this is camera-based, right? So, like, what happens if your hands are tilted certain ways? Like, all of this is accounted for. If you think about eyes are actually one of the things that we feel like we understand the most, but we probably understand the least, like, just intuitively. Our eyes don't behave the way that we think that we do. But these tools in the Mixed Reality Toolkit will allow you to bypass some of those things and just say, like, I don't care how eyes work, I just want the gaze information. And so you can see this is quite a collection of different stuff, and it just keeps going. When does this video end? Hand menus, tooltips. Oh, we'll go. So this one, here is the Mixed Reality Standard Shader. So this, I think, is probably one of the most important things that you need to know about the Mixed Reality Toolkit. This is basically a replacement for Unity's Standard Shader. So if you remember, this is a mobile device. It's a Snapdragon 850. And so when we're tossing the Unity Standard Shader at it, you're going to get some frame rate issues. The Unity Standard Shader is not exactly an optimized for mobile sort of situation. And so this is pretty much a one-for-one replacement for the Mixed Reality, or for the Standard Shader. You can just straight up replace your standard shaders with this one, and you'll get a significant performance boost right off the bat. If you don't know much about shaders, this one you can't go wrong with. But it's also got a huge amount of other features in here too. Like, you'll see in the top left, we've got some stencil stuff. On the bottom left, we have this clipping. So if you ever want to peer inside of your meshes, that's a really awesome tool for that. So this is by my colleague Cameron Mika, and he's really awesome at this stuff. So he's done a very good job with this shader. And if you're ever building a shader family or something like this is also a pretty nice reference. You can dig through the code for it. It's really fun. the other thing here is we have a very robust input abstraction. So this basically takes the idea of like, how do I input with anything and distills it into a set of actions. So this is really, really powerful when we start getting into the cross-platform compatibility aspect of the Mixed Reality Toolkit. The Mixed Reality Toolkit is not specifically for the HoloLens 2. It also works on pretty much any headset. I believe they're also adding support for phone AR as well, like as we speak. So this is a great way to start developing with the Mixed Reality Toolkit now and having your application ready for when the HoloLens 2 is available, which I don't have a release date yet for you guys, I'm sorry, but it's coming. So this is great, a nice input abstraction that you can just hook into, and once you deploy it onto a new device, it should just work. The other thing here is we also provide a standard set of user interface tools. So these basically, we use these ourselves internally when we're building applications for the HoloLens 2. So if you want your application to look like it belongs inside of the shell, the environment of the HoloLens, these things will make your stuff fit right in. And even better, like all of these things are very well thought out and polished. Like we've been using these for a while with the hardware, and so we know exactly where things fail, what things need to be fiddled with, like how that object should respond when you interact with it. And so we've taken care of all of those things for you. This is a lot of work and a lot of research that you guys don't have to do anymore because we did it for you. Isn't it great? Here's some of the eye stuff. So the top there is a heat map. Like heat maps are interesting. Everybody wants to know where people are looking. The bottom right here, those are kind of the more interesting examples. So these are all scenes that you can find in the Mixed Reality Toolkit and look at these things and experience them yourselves. But for eyes, like you can do something like read this text, and as you get towards the bottom of that text, it'll continue scrolling automatically. Pretty magical when you experience it. The other one, the map there, it allows you to zoom in and zoom out where you're looking specifically, so you don't have to pick a point to zoom in on. Also quite magical. And the one on the left there, that's kind of like a look at something and then like tap. And so you can just move your eyes between different objects and tap, 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 tap to confirm. It is the fastest method of selecting things that I have ever encountered. So eyes are really magical. And even if you're not using them explicitly, they can be very useful for adding context to commands that you're doing. Like if you look at something and say like, move this, or like, I want to make that bigger, like you can just say like, well, he's looking at that thing, so maybe that's what that is. So context is really important for eyes. Another thing here, we have the MR learning modules, which were released fairly recently. These are new tutorials specifically based on the new Mixed Reality Toolkit version 2. So check these out if you're interested in learning them. They should be pretty solid. They go through a whole pile of different topics and should be an excellent introduction to how this works. And again, this is on GitHub, so you can file issues here. We pay attention to these issues. Those get triaged and everything. And you can watch development or you can contribute to development. Make a fork of your own. Another thing that we launched recently, within the last month or so, was Spectator View. I actually used to work on Spectator View a long time ago, but I'm really happy with the new rewrite. We got a nice team working on, they rewrote the whole thing, and it is much more adaptable to different projects, and it's fantastic. Like this thing, it just works so well. Like here's an example of this in practice. So you can see the guy on the left there, he's got a phone running, I don't know if it's Android or iOS, but it could be either one. And it's just doing its own tracking through space. They've already localized using Azure Spatial Anchors so that they know where they are in relation to each other. And he can film her interacting with holograms and then broadcast to that screen. So this is a really easy way to just plug this in. It'll automatically scrape your scene and sync some of these elements and share it over the network so that you can show what's happening to other people. It's still something that you need to embed inside of your application, but this is extremely useful if you ever need to communicate about your application with other people. Another thing that's kind of cool, I like this one a fair bit. This is a built-in QR tracker. So this is something that's part of our Windows Mixed Reality headsets, as well as HoloLens 2. And this is done not with the camera, but with the tracking cameras. So this happens at kind of like the driver level at about 2 hertz. But basically it means that the cost for this is negligible. Like you don't have to worry about like overusing your CPU or turning on that camera and like taking control of the camera. That can be an issue sometimes. Even just that light can be off-putting to some people. So having the ability to just say, where is the QR code, what data is on it, is really powerful at that speed and ability. So another thing, Azure Spatial Anchors. This is one of our big ones that we've been doing recently. So Azure Spatial Anchors is basically this idea. It's a cross-platform tool for scanning your environment, building up this anchor from that environment, sending it to the cloud, and then being able to share that across multiple different devices. And it does a lot more than just this. This is something, I've met the lead developer for this, and he comes from a live services background. So this is something that scales. And it doesn't just scale, it scales, which is really cool. And that's one of the reasons why they use it for stuff like Minecraft Earth. So Minecraft Earth is built on Azure Spatial Anchors, where you basically can have a spatial anchor anywhere on the planet. You can scan it, and it'll give you this chunk of data for that particular anchor. It also does a couple of other things, like building up a graph and saying, like, where is this anchor in relation to another anchor? And so you can do things like wayfinding, like, oh, I know that there's another anchor over there, so it can point to it. And as you get closer to that anchor, it'll localize off of the specific anchors that you get when you're there. There's another one. It's just so cool. I like that. In combination with the body occlusion, that's really fun. Yeah, so this is, it's a really powerful tool. It's kind of similar to the World Anchor stuff that you had on HoloLens 1, if you've experienced the HoloLens 1 before. The Azure Spatial Anchors are lighter than the World Anchors were, and they're built for the cloud. Like the World Anchor stuff, if you ever wanted to share those, you had to build that infrastructure yourself. So this is a really great way to save time, share things, store things, and localize with other people. Havok, I don't know if you guys have seen much about this one, but Havok now has a plugin for Unity. So you can use Havok physics inside of Unity instead of Unity's default physics. So physics is extremely important for VR and AR. Like this whole idea of interacting naturally with objects, you have to have a good physics simulation. And so I'm not saying that, that Unity's physics simulation is bad, but some of the responses between these different softwares is very different. So this is what they call penetration recovery. The idea is that when you place something inside of another object, it has to recover in some way or another. And Havok is very good about doing this in a very smooth and unobtrusive way without adding lots and lots of force to the objects. So if you imagine, like this is something that I've encountered a lot with hand interactions, where you grab this object, and your hand is basically something, you can't apply physics to your real hand. So that object that you've grabbed is now at the mercy of this kind of God hand as far as physics is concerned. So that penetration recovery is super important for hand interactions. So Havok physics may be a very good option for you to choose when you're trying to do quality interactions physically. And this is super easy to switch to. Isn't it beautiful? I love it when software just works. Here's another one, the Microsoft Game Stack. This is actually a whole collection of different things, and it does overlap with some of the things that I've already shown you. The Game Stack, games are very much related to anything in the mixed reality space. I like to call mixed reality a games-adjacent technology. But the Microsoft Game Stack has a whole pile of different things. Like you could go through this list for days, honestly. So just go ahead and check out the Game Stack and just make sure that you know what we have on offer there. There's a lot of good stuff. But I pulled out 2 here that were kind of interesting to me. The first one here is Project Acoustics. Audio is another underrepresented item within a lot of this mixed reality stuff. Audio is super important to making things feel believable and real. And Project Acoustics is basically the equivalent of light mapping, but for audio. So you can like build up a representation of your room and then get more accurate audio from within that. So this also does have a Unity plugin for it. Another one is Azure PlayFab. Games may be multiplayer, but so are multi-user experiences. This could be an excellent way to accelerate some of your multi-user stuff. Let's check that one out too. Here's one that released also within the last month. We've been real busy. Mixed reality WebRTC. So this is a technology that's gaining quite a bit of popularity. WebRTC is very useful if you're trying to do any sort of video streaming or audio streaming. Like, here's the video in action. So this is kind of a bit of a funny video. This is a laptop screen. He's wearing a HoloLens running the same application, and he is streaming that video between the laptop and the HoloLens there. So this is something that used to be a little difficult to implement yourself. Like, it was theoretically possible, but I've spent a couple of days banging my head up against it. This now lets you do it easily. Like, this is built for the HoloLens. It's built for Unity. You can just grab this and stick it into your project. It should be significantly easier now. So that's Jerome. I think most of this particular effort was just his. He's pretty cool. This one, mixed reality lighting tools, this is actually my effort. I do a lot of rendering stuff, so lighting is super interesting to me. And it's even more interesting when you get into the context of the HoloLens display. So the HoloLens display is an additive thing, meaning it beams light into your eyes, and it goes over top of the real world. So if you look at previously existing light estimation solutions, like are done in AR and AR Core, they don't have that limitation. They can basically put whatever they want to on top of the image, whereas in this case, I have to take into consideration that there's going to be something behind it. So you can see here, this is kind of the result of this thing. I've got some beautiful red walls here, and it kind of shows that you can see the reflection of those walls off of the objects. And yeah, there it is as a sphere. You can tell that it's not a perfect reflection, but the nice thing about reflections is that you don't often need a perfect reflection. You just need something that kind of has the appearance of reflection. Like, as soon as you get into this marbled sort of surface, you can't tell at all that it's a bad reflection. And so this is built up using kind of this idea that we have a camera and we have an orientation. So you kind of turn your head, and every time you see a new direction, it stamps that picture onto a cube map. And from that cube map, you can do all sorts of wonderful things. Like, for example, calculating a primary light direction. You can then use that to cast shadows and stuff like that. So this is just like refining a light direction over time. So this is really great if you want to take your holograms and make them look a little bit more immersive, which can very much help if you're trying to make something believable. It also allows you to do all sorts of different effects, like if you want to compensate for lighting in the background. Like with additive displays, it's kind of tricky when you're outside or when you're inside, or if you're in an environment where there's a bright side over here and a dark side over there. Looking in one direction versus the other direction can be a little, like the holograms will look different. So this is a great way to use this to compensate for that. Another one, this is a little bit more obscure, the Mixed Reality Extension SDK. And this is something that originally came out of AltSpace VR. AltSpace VR it's basically like a little application that'll run on a server, and everybody can interact with that, and it'll just kind of update between those different things. So you can spawn different sessions for different people to interact with, but basically it's multi-user by default. And this is not just for AltSpace VR. There is actually a Unity SDK for this, where you can take these extensions and add them to your own application. So you can load up whatever extension that you want after that point. So this is a really interesting way for kind of having multiple different applications in the same experience. Here's another one that's really good, Microsoft Maquette. This is one that my coworker, a technical designer, he looked at, and as soon as he saw this, he was like, oh, this changes everything. It's basically a prototyping tool for VR. So you can get into VR and just kind of make whatever you want. And I have a nice video, so I'm just going to show you that. All right, so that's pretty awesome. This is basically a designer's dream. You can just go into here, you can make whatever you want, you can view it at scale from whatever perspective that you feel like. The nice thing about Maquette is that Maquette was actually prototyped using Maquette. So it's not like a dream, like, oh yeah, you could totally prototype it. Like this is actually, they did it. And even better than this actually has a Unity plugin. Fancy that. You can take something that you've built inside of Maquette, take it into your Unity scene, and it maintains the hierarchy and everything like that, and you can start adding your scripts onto it. So this is a great way to just kind of like get started prototyping something. So definitely check this out. It could revolutionize your design experience. Here's another one, Azure Speech Services. So I'm a very strong believer in voice-based interfaces. I think that keyboards are probably on their way out. Isn't that a wonderful idea? If you've ever seen typing on a holographic interface, even in the best of cases, the lack of tactile feedback can be a little bit underwhelming. So being able to just talk to something and have it respond to you naturally is a really important concept that I think that you're going to start seeing more of. And right now, Microsoft actually has some of the best tech out there for this. So this is like speech to text, text to speech, translation, and natural language understanding. So all of this stuff is some best in class. This is our language chart. Like we have all these different languages that we can do for speech to text and text to speech and translating between all of these things. So like one of the things that I've seen, we've actually had two people that were speaking separate languages and the HoloLens would listen to them, send the information over the network to the other one and kind of translate this. So one person was speaking English, one person was speaking Japanese, and they could just talk naturally. This is really kind of incredible. If you then extend that into user interfaces, there's something that we have called Lewis. And Lewis, honestly, like this is one of the most impressive understanding features that I've encountered yet. Basically, you can say, I want to have this sort of intent, and you can say like it has these particular details in it that I want to know about, and over time you can train it to say like these are the intents that I want. You can just kind of click on these things and it'll over time start to recognize it. You don't have to say like I want a noun or I want a verb or I want one of these lists of words. You just kind of say like this is the right word, that's the right word. And it'll recognize that over time. So this particular interface that you see right here is after a session has occurred, like somebody has gone through the application and they tried to say a bunch of different things. So this interface will tell you like what it thought they were trying to say, what it heard, and it'll allow you to go through and refine how it interpreted that thing. You can say like, no, you didn't get that right, here's what was actually right, and you can just go through and train this a little bit, and the next time that you interact with it, it'll be even smarter. So this is a really powerful way to iterate on natural interaction with your application, and I very, very much recommend that you give this a try. It is absolutely fantastic. And the last tool that I just want to remind you about is that like you don't have the HoloLens 2 quite yet, I'm sorry, soon, but these are actually very good devices to be working with in the meantime. The difference between an AR headset and a VR headset is the opacity of the screen, basically. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's approximately right. And so you can start developing for a VR headset, and when the HoloLens 2 does come out, you can just plop things onto there and go. Right? And some of these new generation headsets are absolutely incredible. The HP Reverb is something that I use pretty much daily. It also has a very crisp display. Like I can actually code when I'm in this device. I don't know what's up with the Acer stuff yet, but those will be incredible when they're out as well. And the Odyssey is pretty nice too. So here are most of the links to the tools that I mentioned, so you can grab them there. If you have any questions about development stuff, you can reach me on Twitter, or there's my email address. But I'll take some questions. We've got microphones on either side there if you want to do that. And afterwards, I have a couple of stickers down there. They're holographic HoloLens stickers. So, questions.
Awesome stuff. Can't wait to work on HoloLens too. My question is, I'm interested in the mixed reality WebRTC stuff that you were talking about. What's the latency on it? I'm here, by the way.
Okay.
Oh, there I am. What's the latency on the between the phone, between the HoloLens and what gets streamed on Unity, or vice versa?
In the context of...
Like, does it take like a second, 2 seconds, or is it,
like the spectator view or just the mirroring stuff?
the mirroring.
Mirroring. So that actually depends on what tech you're using. We also have mirrorcast functionality, so you can do mirrorcasting from HoloLens to your device. And that latency is actually pretty quick. Okay. I don't remember what the specific numbers are, but it's much faster than if you're going through the web interface for mirroring. So
thank you. Follow-up, does it also work on a phone?
I don't know. I haven't tried.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Cool.
Hi. So we already heard that there will be support for HoloLens 2 on AR Foundation. But of course, AR Foundation will take some time to get all the newest and latest features integrated. So my question is, can I use MRTK and AR Foundation simultaneously? So I have the cross-platform for, like, say, iPhone, Android stuff, and still use the newest features of the MRTK when I'm using the HoloLens.
So I know the AR Foundation announcements were a little bit recent, so I don't have a good solid answer for you quite yet. I know that we don't really intend to replace Unity functionality in that way, so we'll see exactly what happens. What I would say is that the MRTK is always going to be a good solution to use if you're doing HoloLens development, because it's our flagship. It has all of that knowledge in it, and will continue to improve and extend itself with really advanced features. So,
okay.
Hello. Yeah, hi. Nice talk. I actually own a HP Reverb 2 days ago, and these are still these old plastically controllers. So, is it anyway possible to make this controllers more business-like, like it's advertised for the headset? So, are there any plans to upgrade the mixed reality hardware? And also from the software side, last year I've asked this, with HoloLens 1 it was actually possible to be in the same room and have this position of the two HoloLenses synchronized. And I wanted to do this with the mixed reality headset as well, and this was not possible, so I had to switch to OpenVR and the Lighthouse system, which make this possible. Is this now possible, or can this be possible in the future?
Okay. So the first one was...
the hardware?
The controller.
Too much plastic?
So I unfortunately don't have a good answer for you there yet, but keep your ears open. The other one was spatial synchronization between two HoloLenses, yes, or
so
mixed
also
reality
like all the other HoloLens features,
yeah,
like the spatial awareness and stuff.
Mm-hmm. So for the immersive headsets, I've seen this done through the QR codes. The QR codes is a very easy way to do this. Yeah. I think we also have some spatial sharing stuff, but I don't know exactly what the status of that is yet.
I read the tutorials yesterday. It's only for HoloLens currently. So.
Yeah, there is something for
It must be possible to share the boundary settings of one PC to the other one, but I didn't get this done.
There should be a way to do it. Just contact me afterwards. I might have a better answer.
Okay,
there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And.
Oh, hiya. So Unity, the rendering pipeline is kind of changing a little bit. They've got universal render pipeline coming in and high definition render pipeline. Is there plans to support that in any way?
I don't know what our plans are for the render pipelines quite yet. I think we might be waiting a little bit for that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, good. And last but not least, if you know the answer for, what's the abbreviation for ALMCV, as in ALMCV intervention, I have a headset for you. Not a headset, but microphones? Earphones, yeah. Anyhow, thanks for coming.